Welcome to the Evolved Caveman, where men learn to be successful and happy with your host, Dr. John Schinnerer, as he shares the most impactful ideas and practices for you to get the most from your relationships, your work, and from your life. Now here's Dr. John.
Hey everybody, this is Dr. John Schinnerer with the latest episode of the Evolved Caveman, and today we're talking about anxiety and depression. I've got Melissa Howard here all the way from over the pond, and she has had a 12-year career in healthcare. After that, she left her full-time job to reinvent her life on her own terms. She believed there were more fulfilling and creative ways of living and found them. Today, Melissa ignites the lives of others to create lasting change so they can reach the highest potential by developing a peak performance mindset in a way that is fun, honest, and filter-free. How you doing, Melissa? Thanks for joining us.
I'm great, thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
And so, again, congratulations on your pregnancy. That's amazing news.
Thank you so much.
I'm thrilled for you.
I was just saying before, apologies if I look and sound a bit ropey, but trying to interpret what ropey means. It's proven quite difficult.
Slang that how much I love it. So for anyone out there that is also feeling ropey, my apologies to them. Hopefully you feel better soon.
Yes.
All right. So, Melissa, let's start off by talking about a story of you at your very best, kind of, a story of struggle to sort of triumph or overcoming the struggle.
Yeah. So it's quite difficult to pinpoint one. So I'm just going to tell you all in a nice short little, what I do, like a synopsis. So as John very rightly said, I am from over the pond. I've lived in my small, you call it a village or a town, all of my life. I'm now getting to the ripe old age of 31. And I'm an only child, and I had a great childhood. I was brought up by the most loving parents. I had everything, spoiled child, you could say. I had everything. Yet the one thing that I didn't have was true understanding of myself, because all I wanted to do was to please others. Unfortunately as well, or fortunately as I see it now, I went through a period of sexual abuse by a family member. And, at the age, I didn't realize it was wrong. And I think as time went on and the realization of that, and then unfortunately puberty comes in, and then, everything happens, I just kind of felt like I didn't have one identity. So for me, at the age of 13, 14, I was already having symptoms of, really low depression and anxiety. And again, that feeling of, what is going to become of me? What is going to become of my life? Is this it? And this was, as a teenager, I was really young. So obviously that was a huge scare for my parents. I still apologize to them now and again. But what I really did as the time on is I knew that the only person who could change things was for me. I had quite a lot of therapy, and everything that unfortunately was pinned back to that incident. And for me, in the nicest way possible, it wasn't a traumatic incident for me. Everything else around it was. Like, I was bullied. Like, people would, unfortunately, because I went through puberty early, the lady time happens and things start growing. And it was kind of like, oh my God, you're the weird one. You're the odd one out. And I've always felt the odd one out through all of my life. So I kind of finished high school, did pretty well, went to college, and it just didn't fit. And I just thought, this isn't for me. So I dropped out twice. And it was really the turning point of whether it was just going to make me or break me. And I just kind of thought, this isn't going to break me. I have got a lot of really good qualities within me. I'm very loyal and very honest. I can pretty much put my hand to anything and make it happen. The only thing that was getting in my way was me. Mm-hmm. And it was totally me. So managed to switch it around. It was really quite a blur when I try and think of it now. It's kind of, I feel like I had like a bit of a concussion at that time. And I actually became, within 2 years of me dropping out of college and whatnot, I had lots of different jobs in between, but I actually became a senior leader within a healthcare organisation, the NHS. And it sort of grew from there. And it was great because I kind of was everyone was kind of looking up to me, and I was, I had this fabulous life from the outside. Like, I had the car, I had the house, I had the partner. But the one thing that I didn't have was me. I still was shape-shifting. I was still pleasing others. And I just didn't really have a grip on what it is that I actually wanted. And my aha moment or my light bulb moment didn't really, it's not as special as everybody else's. Mine was really quite boring, driving home from work and just thinking, I just don't know how I got home. It was quite scary because I was on autopilot that much in my life that I would go to work, put on a brave face, live up to everybody else's standards. God forbid if they were to, open the door and surprise me, they'd see that I was probably crying or I was really upset. Yeah, when I actually got home this night, I just thought, you know what, the only person, like what I did all those years ago, the only person who can change this is me. So let's invest in yourself rather than investing all of that energy in trying to please others because it's not working.
Yeah, I mean, I was taking notes as you were talking. I mean, one of the things that comes to mind is that people-pleasing approach, which a lot of people I talk to have learned. I learned it really well when I was young. I mean, so much of my time and effort was put into trying to please my parents.
Yes.
And then it grows from there, right, to trying to please teachers and friends. And one of the things I tell my clients is, one of the things I can guarantee, if you're spending all your time and energy trying to please others, I guarantee you that you will be miserable and that you will lose yourself. Mm-hmm. Because we can become these social chameleons. And if we're trying to please everyone else, you can't please anyone because you're being ripped in 30 different directions.
Most definitely. And as part of my journey, trying to learn that was not a positive was kind of like, but that's me. That's my values. That's what I want to do and how I want to be. Whereas actually what I learned was it's not pleasing others, it's serving others from when you're from a place of fullness, not from a place of lack or emptiness, Absolutely. Which is what I was doing.
And I think that, when you're, one of the things that I think can counter that is learning that it's okay to disappoint other people and learning how to do that in a polite yet firm way. So learning how to say no, that it's okay to say no, and that some people don't take one no as no, that some people you need to say no 4, 5, 6 times to. That was a really confusing one to me when I was a kid. Like I said no, but what part of no don't you understand? Mm.
Like how many times do I have to do it? Do I have to do it in a different pitch?
Yeah. And
do I have to be wearing something
then I had to come up with different ways to say no. What part of no don't you understand? Did I stutter? Like, do you need me to spell it out? Like, do you want me to say it louder? And so, but to get comfortable with saying no to requests repeatedly, I think is a really good skill, because I've met, full-grown adults that are highly successful that are just, they're dying literally at a young age because they can't say no to any request to help. So the intentions are quite good. They're trying to help everybody, but they themselves are last on their list and they're getting run ragged.
And I feel as well, especially when you get to either a certain position in your life, that sometimes you can say no really, really easily to certain aspects, and other ones it's just crippling. Yeah. And I think that can be quite difficult, because if you just can't say no across the board, you can kind of think, okay, I can learn something, or this isn't definitely for me. But when you know that you have got the ability to do it, but something is really holding you back. So for me, that was that. I was kind of like, why can't I say no to, all of these people? Yes, I want to serve people and help people, and that's all I want to do. But my God, they can say no to me without even blinking an eye.
Well, yeah, and I've tried to drill down on that inability to say no. And what is it? Because I believe it's emotions that drive the majority of our behavior. And so I was looking at it at an emotional level, and I realized that if someone comes to me and asks me to serve on a board, or, I don't know, be chairman of something, that is flattering to my ego. So I have to overcome that flattering piece emotionally. And then the other part of it is I don't want to disappoint them by saying no. So there's actually at least 2 aspects emotionally that can hook us. So I think just to be aware of both of those can help. Okay, yeah, this is flattering and I've got to take care of myself. I mean, one of the things that really struck me in the face several years ago when I was doing more executive coaching was looking at the schedules, like a weekly calendar for a manager in a corporation versus one of the executives or the CEO. So the manager's calendar was just littered with meetings. And they would come in and they would complain about how these meetings were just useless and they were a waste of time. They had very little time to do their actual work, but their calendars were just chock full of things to do and they were overworked and harried. And then you look at the CEO's calendar and there's like 4 to 6 meetings per week and these big blocks of empty time that they would use to read or get a massage or exercise or do self-care. And I was like, which one of these makes more sense?
Yeah, most definitely. And again, even just looking at us as individuals is seeing how often do we put ourselves above other things? And it's still, even now, I'm not saying I'm an absolute queen at it, but still, sometimes I have to stop and think, hey, am I actually getting back on this treadmill again that I spent a long time trying to get off? Just because I'm in there, as you'll know, being in this world of trying to help other people and bring people out of their shell and, saying that they can be more, the more people say, can I just pick your brains? Can I just do this? Or, I've had this. And I do say to people, reach out to me if you've got a question. Mm-hmm. But sometimes it's that you can still reach out to me, but you're not going to hear back from me in the hour.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting. Just
having those boundaries.
Defining boundaries. I think boundaries is a big piece of this. Who do you say yes to? Who do you say no to? How do you say no? How do you define boundaries when you say yes? I've got 15 minutes or an hour. I remember seeing a movie about a New York psychologist. And I remember she came out on the street and was trying to get a taxi. And a friend of hers comes up to her with a personal question. And she hands him a card and says, call my office. My hourly rate is $300 an hour. And it was just like, wow, that's a harsh boundary that you won't even give a friend, some advice. And so I think that's one extreme. And then the other extreme is you're trying to say yes to everybody and tapping yourself out in the meantime.
Most definitely. And it's not going to be the same cookie cutter for everybody. It's finding out what works for you. And if it is slightly off still, it's knowing that you can tweak it. Mm-hmm. And that's what I think really key with everything that we do is knowing that even if it's not right for you just now, you can tweak it slightly.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think a lot of this is fine tuning and tweaking. And getting better at it and getting more comfortable with it, with these skills of like saying no or approaching people or asking for help. Let me shift subjects a little bit because I wanted to get back to the sexual abuse piece. And you don't need to go into detail, but one of the things that I wanted to talk about with you in general is this idea of trauma, because I think, Faith Harper has a definition of trauma as anything that disconnects you from a feeling of safety. Mm-hmm. And so when we're traumatized, and I really think most of us have experienced some degree of trauma, if not horrendous amounts of trauma in our life. Yeah. But when we're traumatized, it primes that part of the brain that makes us either hypervigilant or makes us really quick and easy to head into that fight, flight, freeze response. Mm-hmm. And so I just wanted to see, if you could talk about the trauma and how that affected you, what you noticed about it, and then how you got past it.
Yeah, I think for me, it was the trust element of not really knowing that what was happening was wrong. And, because I idolized this person within the family unit. And I think as well, for me, it was kind of moving on from that and, from the being bullied and, confiding in people in terms of being bullied and then kind of thinking, well, now this has happened. Who can I trust? So I think for me, knowing that I can trust myself, but can I? Because I let that happen. Mm-hmm. So it was kind of that, especially growing up in those teenage years, it was always am I doing the right thing? Actually telling people. So who's going to believe me?
Did you tell some friends and the friends then used it against you later? What was the bullying?
No, so the bullying was just my appearance and how I looked. And I was very tall in comparison to my peers. I don't think I've grown much since the age of 11. 5'4". But yes, it just, for me, it was really that trust element and knowing that I can trust again. is really powerful, because I didn't realize that it actually shaped the way in which I went into conversations with people. It was probably the part of the mask that was starting to come up of pleasing others, was that I just wanted to have a mask on. It was like, they can't hurt me if I only let them see a little bit.
Right.
And they can't hurt me if I completely, in the nicest way possible, like falsify who I am. So in high school, and I love it because I've got so many experiences from it, but I was a chameleon in high school. Throughout the 6 years in high school, I basically was a mosher, I was a goth, I was, a rapper. I did everything. I just moved into different groups, and it was great because I had loads of friends, but I didn't have a best friend.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, back to that trust issue, like, did you notice that changed your core belief about people? Because what I see in a lot of my clients is they'll have something traumatic happen to them, and they adopt a core belief to protect themselves, something like people can't be trusted. And so you overgeneralize to the whole population, which can isolate you.
Yeah, I think that, and the fact that my father was a police officer as well. So, I also grew up with, there's bad people out there. I find it difficult walking down the street at night. I've always found that, it's those little things of, bad things happen at night. It can happen in the day. So it's trying to, unravel all of those belief systems that have been, from an environmental point of view and an experience point of view, been sort of interweaved into me.
Yeah. And part of it is interesting to me because I think part of it comes down to a probability, in the sense that what's the real probability of sort of bad people out there in the world? And, if you think that more than half of the people in the world are bad or out to get you or can't be trusted, it limits your ability to go out there and move through the world easily. And some people I know are like, it's 80 or 90%. And so I'm trying to kind of adjust that probability down. And I really believe that, based on research, there's about 15% of the population that will do you harm and be okay with it. And, those are borderlines and narcissists and sociopaths and psychopaths. But the vast majority of people out there are good, have good intentions, are trying to be trustworthy and do the right thing, will help you out if you need a hand. And I think, just adopting that belief radically changes how you go throughout the world, because then you're open to having a conversation with the cashier at the supermarket or the guy at the gas station. And when you do that, if you can make them smile and you get a smile back, you both leave with a little bit of a positive emotional boost, and it just brightens your day a little bit. And the more you can string those kind of interactions together, the happier life you have.
Yeah, and kindness is free. And we need to share it as much as possible, because again, with knowing people who have, been through the justice system, or, are with working in the healthcare system, there's bad people that come in all the time. But when you actually sort of learn, not all of them, but when you learn more about their journey and where they've got to, it's just totally misunderstood.
Yeah.
And it's all they know. So it's those belief systems, that have been woven into them. It's kind of like, this is the only way that I can be somebody. This is the only way I can get through life, is by doing X or treating somebody else like Y. And I don't agree with it. But I also feel that there are, I think we're so quick to judge.
Oh, absolutely.
So quick to judge.
And the longer I live, the more I believe that those core beliefs have a huge impact on the degree of happiness that we have, the degree of success that we have, the financial success that we have. I mean, I'm not worthy. I'm not smart enough. People are generally bad. People are liars. They can't be trusted. All that stuff holds us back. Police can't be trusted. I mean, all those things, I think, and I understand there's reasons for some of these beliefs, but I think we generally overgeneralize from a bad experience or two or three, and those beliefs negatively impact how we live our lives. So for instance, when you dropped out, you said you dropped out of college twice. Like, what was your belief about your intelligence after that?
For me, I just kind of said this wasn't for me anymore. So that I couldn't sit still in a room full of people being talked at. So when I came around to training events, because I'd have to do training events, that was my belief. I'd sit there and think, oh, no, I can't. This is another, what I didn't want to do when I was in college. Yes, it's only a day, but let's just, smile and get on with it, rather than actually be open to what the teaching and learning was. So, yeah, the core beliefs do sort of run through. Thankfully, it wasn't my self-worth at that perspective and how I felt from an intelligence point of view, but how I, saw different opportunities. I'd be like, that's not for me.
So that's fascinating. So for you, it wasn't about intelligence. It was just your story of, I can't sit still for this.
Yeah. If anything, in the nicest way possible, it sounds horrendous with a big ego, is I'm better than this.
Oh, yeah. I've heard that too.
To say like, I can do so much, yet I'm sitting here being like held back.
Yeah. I've heard that from a lot of young men that, they do believe they're almost too smart for this or too good for this. And so they shine it on and they don't get educated. But then later on, a lot of them, they'll be 25, 26, and then they're stuck. They're in a hard place because they haven't found a way through that or past that.
Yeah. And it wasn't more of because when I say that, it sounds like I'm very entitled, but it was more, I just had so much sort of like energy. I'm like doing this with my hands. It was just so much energy packed in to say, I need to burst out and like help people. And I can't help people learning about algebra.
Yeah, and I don't think it's entitled. I just think it's honest. Because these core beliefs fascinate me, and I think they affect all of us. And they're just thoughts. They're just stories, and they're the mind to me is a random thought generating machine, which sometimes serves us and sometimes really screws us. And so I'm always interested in kind of what's going on behind the scenes, what's going on in our head. So I appreciate you sharing that with us. I don't think it's entitled at all.
Yeah,
I think it's honest.
Yeah, it's good because what I love as well, the questions, you never stop to really think about what was it?
And yet it affects us so much.
Most definitely.
And I can't tell you how many people have come into my office and said, oh my God, John, you're going to think this is so crazy, but ... And I'm like, well, tell me. And I've, in 20 plus years of doing this, maybe once or twice have I heard something that I'm like, yeah, okay, maybe that's a little bit crazy. And that's usually someone having a psychotic break where they're having a break from reality. And it's like, okay, yeah, we need to get you into the hospital. We need to get some meds in you. But I mean, other than that, like I've heard every thought possible, I think, from violent to sexual to, self-loathing. And it's like, yeah, okay, it's just a thought.
And that, I think, is
acting on it. It's okay.
Yeah. And like, you saying that, I used to say that all the time. If that used to be my go-to, this may sound a bit crazy. And it was only when somebody just said, can you stop saying that? Because it's completely, I don't know how they positioned it, but they were basically saying that it's completely disqualifying what you're about to say.
It's completely mental.
Yeah. I'm already thinking I'm not going to like what you're going to say. I'm going to
already discounting it or putting it down or.
Yeah.
But I mean, and I mean, those are the best thoughts to me. Those are the most interesting thoughts. But also, I would say that those are the most frightening thoughts at times. But they're also where I think the creativity and brilliance and innovation come to or arrive from as well.
They do, and that's that creativity. That's what I'd lost is creativity.
Well, and I think that's what a lot of people lose because we're just trying to stay in the box and not be judged.
I don't know if you can hear my pooches in the background.
What kind of dog is he?
The hound. So I've got 2 rescue dogs.
Okay.
So one is a puggle, which is a pug and a beagle.
Okay.
And the other one is a Staffordshire bull.
Nice. I love dogs. We just got a golden doodle puppy. And he worked all night last night and kept us up, which he's never done before. So I'm looking a bit knackered this morning.
You're looking a bit ropey there, John.
I also had my 4-year anniversary last night. So we went out to dinner and celebrated that and had a little bit of wine and then didn't sleep.
Congratulations.
Thanks. I was running a bit ragged this morning. So let's talk a little bit about, so you mentioned depression and I mean, I've dealt with depression and anxiety in my life as well, which is funny. You mentioned that you felt kind of like a fish out of water or like you were the only one, and for different reasons. But I felt when I was younger that, I felt things deeply, and I would go into moods of sadness where I would just kind of withdraw and write and listen to music and read. But I felt like I was the only guy who felt things deeply. Come to find out, that wasn't true. We were all just wearing the mask, as you mentioned, and trying to pretend that we don't feel.
Yes.
So you mentioned a little bit of depression, but I also know you've dealt with anxiety in the past. Where does that come up?
I just think they're brother and sister. And when I felt really depressed, I just had this overwhelming feeling of anxiety, and I was completely second guessing myself all the time. I was overwhelmed. As I said, people would come into my room and I'd be like, "Hi guys." It was literally a show I was putting on. The second the door closed, because I had my own office, second the door closed, I was like, what did I say? Do you think they took that the wrong way? And it was constantly overthinking things, or, if I had to, unfortunately, discipline people, I just fell to pieces. Like, I knew it needed to get done. I knew what to do. I was very confident in that, but it was kind of like, but what are they going to think of me? This is going to be a judge of me and my character.
Yeah. And that's a common piece of anxiety. Are they looking at me? What will they think of me? How will they judge me? And it's funny, there's a cartoon that I saw a while back, which I think is brilliant. It's, how anxious people feel. And it was someone standing on a train platform, and they were looking at their phone, and there's a crowd of people around them, and everyone is looking at them. And in fact, some people are actually just eyeballs looking up and down because they can't look directly. Right. So that everyone in the crowd is looking at this one person. And that's how anxiety feels. And then how it really is. And the guy's still on the train platform looking at his phone, and no one else is paying attention to him. Everyone else is on their phone. And so it's a perception, it's a feeling, that feeling like everyone's looking at me. But in truth, most people aren't looking at you. And one of the things I'll tell a lot of my clients is, even people will look at you at times, like you walk into a room, but pick the interpretation that serves you. So assume they're looking at you because you're handsome or beautiful or striking, or you've got a presence. Pick a positive interpretation. Go with that.
Yeah. And again, talking about anxiety, the I wouldn't say the opposite of it, but another sort of parallel to it that really hurt me and allowed me not to go out was the fear of what would happen to me. Like, I'm sure, unfortunately, you guys in America have been troubled with terrorist attacks and whatnot. I couldn't go to London for years, and one of my most recent jobs was traveling down there every month, and I had to really get over my fear of traveling down there, and knowing that. And honestly, I sweat. It's making me sweat now thinking about it. It would really make you sweat. I would just be looking at people, and then I was like, don't look at them or smile at them, because if you smile at them, they won't do it. And then I was like, you ought to go. And, it was completely overtaking what I was doing. I'd arrive and I'd go, oh, it didn't happen. Okay, great. And then I'd get back on the tube, and then I'll be like, oh my God, all the time. And it's just, it's such an unhealthy way of existing, because I didn't go out. I didn't go on particular trips. I didn't go to holidays for the fear of something terrible happening.
And how did you deal with that?
I had to get over it myself, because one, I was to the point of, do I need to get a different job?
Wow.
And I thought, but it's not just affecting my job. This is affecting my social life as well. And, I just made, for me, it was kind of like, as you say, probability. What's the probability of it happening? And am I really going to take the risk? Am I just going to be more vigilant when I'm there? Like, I haven't drank for 12 months now. And it was kind of like, before that, I was making the decision, do I go and just have my wits about me? Do I go and share my worries with a couple of people I really trust, so they can kind of keep an eye on me, that I'm not, going into a rabbit hole? And for me as well, it's being open and vulnerable, that I'm not perfect, and that, things that I know are a bit silly scare me.
Yeah. And I think those are pretty reasonable fears, especially in this day and age. And so the question is, how do you approach them? How do you address them? And I think one of the ways is that probability game. What's the probability that something happens when I'm in the tube? What's the probability that something happens when I'm in London? Because honestly, the probability of that's like 0.00001% that you are involved in something like that. So that's one way to calm yourself down in the moment. The other, I think, is, practicing something like mindfulness, breathing deeply, exhaling out longer than you inhale. Those kind of things are all helpful. The other thing is, and I think part of the terrorism is a psychological game in a way. Like one of the things they're trying to do is to instill fear in us. And so, my approach is, fuck that. There's no way I'm going to let them win. So I'm going to go about my life, even if it results in my death, I'm going to go about my life exactly as I need to. And I think the other piece of it is kind of that idea of non-attachment to life. And, the Buddhist monks will do death meditation where they meditate on their own death. And part of the reason for that is to instill the idea of impermanence, that all of this is going to, go away into dust at some point, myself included. And I think the more comfortable you can get with your own death, that idea of your own death, the more fully you can embrace life. And I think the same idea is there even in like marriage. So the more comfortable you can get with the idea of the possibility of divorce, the more you can turn towards your marriage and be more fully in it. So it's kind of the paradox of life in a way.
Yeah, that's incredible. I never knew that about the monks. I will definitely look into that. I like that.
Yeah, it was funny when I first read about it. I was like, ew, like that's gross. And I had that kind of disgust response, and then I was like,
I love your reaction to it.
Oh, okay, that's why they do it.
Yeah, and when you were saying as well about the little things, I think gratitude for me was kind of like knowing that it's just having that like sort of inner peace. So it's not going as far as the monks just yet, but it's having that gratitude. Again, like flying, I'm awful with flying. Yeah. If I'm going somewhere, I'm kind of like, of course it's going to happen to me en route to New York. It's meant to be my best ever holiday. And then on the way, and what I used to do on the way back is saying, I had the best holiday. If it happens now, I'm going to die happy. Like how twisted when you think of it, but it's the gratitude. And that's what I didn't catch on to.
Well, but a lot of these are games that we play in our own head. So whatever games you can play that gets you through it, I think is effective. And so I think gratitude's a great way to go. And I wonder, part of it when I hear your story is I go back to the trust and control piece, right? So like if you're in a plane, really that's giving up control to someone else. So it's trusting that the pilots know what they're doing and will get you where you need to go safely. Mm-hmm. And so, part of it is that exercise in giving up control of your life for that period of time when you're in the air.
Mm. Most definitely. And it's that control, because I think for me, it was always trying to get control of things. Mm-hmm. Like I'm a high achiever, I have control. And then that loss of control, it means, well, who am I if I haven't got that?
Well, and then a lot of times for many people, that loss of control scares the crap out of us. Mm. Like I need to have control all the time. And if I don't have control right now when I'm in the air, like, what do I do? Mm. And so I think just breathing into that and realizing that's the dynamic can be helpful. Like, okay, the pilot's got this. I'm just going to have a drink or maybe a sleeping pill, and I'll just
going to listen to very loud music.
Going to go to sleep.
What I love as well on some of the long haul planes is they've actually got meditation apps built into the little desktop that's in the seat. I love that.
Yeah. And that's a really good way to go. And I like the guided meditations more than just doing mindfulness on your own in that moment, because it gets your attention out of your head onto their voice. And their voice is soothing and relaxing, because part of it is you want to get your attention out of your damn head. Because the more you focus on your own thoughts, the more rabbit holes you can run down.
And you don't realize you're doing it. You think you're still practicing mindfulness and you've managed to write a play in your mind by the end of it. And you're like,
that's the whole practice of mindfulness, right? Is to realize you got hooked by the thought, oh my God, the plane's going down, the plane die, I'm going to die. Oh wait, I'm off my breath. Okay, come back to my breath.
Yeah.
And I think, when I was a kid, when I was a teenager in my 20s, I would get anxious in conversations. And so I was never really present with you talking. I was always thinking 3 seconds ahead in the future, what am I going to say? I don't want to appear stupid. Say something smart. Come up with something to say. And even if you're 3 seconds ahead worrying about what you're going to say, you're not fully in the present moment. You're not fully in the conversation with you. And so that took a little bit of work too. Now, the flip side of that is sometimes I don't have anything to say. Like, okay, well, go with that.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's trying to second guess and you're missing cues.
Yeah.
Potentially. Yeah. It's a wonderful thing is our mind, but it's just for me, learning about it day in and day out. I learn something new every day.
Yeah. It's wonderful and terrible. There's a great saying, your mind is like a dark, scary neighborhood that you're afraid to go alone. And I think there's a lot of truth to that. I think at times it can be a beautiful place to be, and at times it can be a bit scary. So the other place I wanted to go with you is you use photography to help your clients develop confidence, self-worth, and their self-image.
I do.
Speak about that a little bit.
So again, it kind of links into my story of the mask that we have. And for me, the many different masks that I used to wear, because when you get in front of a camera, regardless of whether you love it or hate it, it's really quite raw. And you can wear a mask and put a front on and do a selfie and pout your lips or however you want to pose. But actually showing your true self into a camera lens is so powerful because exactly, that's beautiful, is that you can really start to, for me, unravel those layers sometimes quickly for people that they didn't even know. So I kind of got into this without even thinking about it. So I do coaching and I do photography, but I found that I was coaching whilst I was doing photography because I'd have these, beautiful people turn up, all done up in suits and looking all powerful, but they were wanting to have something done for their, their social media, not LinkedIn, but their social media. And I'm thinking, why are you turning up in a suit? And it was because that's how they felt they had to show up. And then when I was actually kind of like, well, why, can I just ask why you're posing like that? Well, that's how everybody else poses. It's like, but how do you want to pose? And just asking those questions. Yeah, there you go. Asking those questions and actually digging down deep. People are now coming to me to say, I want to show up for my clients as I am. But when I think of myself and the fear of going in front of a camera and having pictures taken, I automatically think I have to be something else. And if anything, I want to be more of me, but I lose me when I think about actually being myself and putting myself out there. So it's a really powerful process. So it's part. I think
the key that you just said is I lose myself when I think.
Oh, most definitely. Yeah.
And I think, as soon as you start thinking, you're hooked.
Yeah.
So how do you get them to peel back the layers in front of the camera?
So the first thing that we do is it's a standard questionnaire of what do they want and why do they want it. The questions are pretty loaded. They don't feel like they're loaded, but they are. So again, it's those little subliminal messages in how they write their answer. You think, okay, we need to work on this, we need to work on that. And again, it's I also ask whether, and I do say, we won't be doing them like this, is what sort of images do you like? Either of yourself or of somebody else. How do you want them to look like? How do you want them to turn up? And then when we get on a call together, we go through all of that because sometimes it's because they look really pretty and I'm not pretty. Or, the way that they have their makeup was great and I can't do my makeup or I can't do this. Or even for men, when I've had men, it's because they look masculine. It's you're looking pretty masculine in front of me right now. And they're like, no, I'm not. You can see them all kind of going, it's not me. And, it's just kind of knowing that it's so raw, peeling back those masks, that actually when you can have a picture taken of yourself and you truly love it because of the experience, it's powerful. Most of my clients the pictures that they select, because I don't select them for them. This is all about you selecting your pictures, warts and all. The majority of them, they've got the double chin or they've got the bulge, but they're laughing truly. And they're like, I've never seen myself laugh before. because you don't really laugh in the mirror. Or if you do, it's isn't it? It's a palm one. You don't see all of the...
A photo of someone truly laughing and joyful, I think those are masterful and beautiful.
Truly beautiful.
And, I mean, it's funny. Like, I remember when I did the radio show, I don't know, it was 12 plus years ago, like I was terrified to get on the radio. And so like that took a lot of work to just get comfortable and relaxed on air on a live radio show, because to me, there was 10 million listeners, or the radio signal reached 10 million people. Mm-hmm. So in my anxious mind, I'm like, oh my God, 10 million people are listening. So that really screwed me up. So it took a lot of work to learn to relax in front of just a mic. Yes. But then to begin to do video, like I had another block to begin doing video because I just didn't like the way I looked. And then, a few years ago, my eye got screwed up. I had 3 surgeries on my right eye. So now the pupil in my right eye doesn't dilate properly. So many times I'll have one pupil that's huge and one that's responding appropriately, and it looks funny. So I've had to learn to get past that as well. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I think being able to relax in front of a camera is a huge accomplishment.
Yeah. And it is, because it's you. And, in the nicest way possible, you've got to look at yourself in your whole self. So again, when we look at a mirror and we kind of stand there and breathe in and we're like, okay, that's a good look. Can you walk around like that? No. And again, for branding and who we are, and, people buy from people they know, like, and trust. Yeah, what we constantly churn out and what we put out is false, and what we think people want to see. One of the guys that really influenced me to really sort of get into this and think that this was a thing to do and not just my weird way of taking pictures of people, was a guy from, I think he was from Canada, who had a history of mental health. He was homeless. He was sleeping on a beach, and he ended up taking over this cement factory business. And he was like, I was literally at the point of getting taken over by others. So what could I do to differentiate myself? And he said the only thing I could do was share my story and hope that people would see me as, someone that they could relate to. So all of his imagery on his website, there's not a piece of cement in sight, because it's not very sexy, is it? It's pictures of him like really looking into the camera, raw, black and white, his team, warts and all, and really sharing their story. He is now like internationally renowned for cement.
Wow.
And it's just kind of, it's showing them.
So how do you do in front of a camera? How did that start off? Were you comfortable at first? Because you're doing great now.
Yeah, so I'm fine talking. Like I just talk. I'm fine when it's on my terms and there's nobody behind it. Because it's kind of like, in the nicest way possible, I can delete. It's like when you're on your phone, you can delete stuff you don't like. Mm-hmm. But when it's other people can see your flaws, like I'm in motion now, it's fine. But when it's still, it's kind of like, but you don't know the whole me. You don't know the whole story. Mm. So I still say to people, you say I'm confident, you say I'm outgoing, but still it's a raw deal when I get in front of a camera too, because you're seeing the whole me without a mask. And
I think being able to trust the camera person, the person taking the photos, and to be able to relax with them, that's a huge plus on the part of the photographer. Like if they can make you or help you relax, that's a big deal.
Most definitely. And it's a style as well. Mm-hmm. So this is my bag. This is what I do. And I'll get people who'll say, can you do my wedding? Can you take, no. I was like, I would love to come to your wedding. I will take pictures on the phone, but it's not my bag. It's not where I come alive. I come alive when I see you scared shitless. Because I'm going to step into that light with you and do it with you. I'm going to feel it. I'm going to go through it with you. I'm going to be vulnerable with you. It's not you by yourself. We do this as a partnership. And again, when I look at the images, it's the experience that goes with it, because people say, oh, it's gorgeous, that picture. And it's like, but I know what happened just before then. I know the breakthrough that they had just before then. I know what we were laughing about or what we were just about to cry about. So it's that, for me, it's more than just a still. It's the journey. And that's what I worry sometimes when I have somebody taking pictures of me is, will they understand the journey and be willing to step into it too? Or are they just after the still?
Well, and I think, the beautiful thing about photography is when you can catch the person in an emotion. Like if you're just there stoic, not feeling, I don't know, that's boring to me.
Yeah.
Like give me, like we were talking about laughter or joy or even sadness with a tear or, some emotion, anger, like anything that's raw and unfiltered is attention grabbing to me.
It is. And I think when you can truly look into somebody's eyes on a picture and feel emotion, that's when you kind of think, now that is a good picture. And, there's other photographers out there and I absolutely would love to hold a space for them because their imagery is so beautiful. Yet when you look at them, it's a still, they're dead behind the eyes. And it makes me so sad because it's that energy and that vibe and that vibrancy of life is gone. And in the nicest way possible, like if I see a still of somebody I'm going to work with or I need to trust in, if I don't feel a connection with them on a still, I probably won't reach out.
Yeah. Yeah, it was interesting. I just did a photo shoot with Jory, my partner, and my goal for the photo shoot was to relax and then also to see how many different emotional expressions I could get captured on film. Just because, I've had clients tell me I have a really an expressive face, which I was like, oh, cool. Because there was a time in my life when I didn't.
Right.
When, when I was a teenager, I was just trying to wear the mask and not convey anything because I didn't want to give anything away. And I didn't want to show that I felt. Because, I was embarrassed. I didn't want to put that out there to be humiliated because that's typically what we get as men. Yes,
most definitely. And it's not stepping into your feminine. It's just being you.
Yeah.
And if you, I was just watching something before, an interview with a star in the UK, male, it was really big in the 90s. And it was like, what's your favorite color? And he was like, pink. And even I went, pink? Even my colour's not pink. But it's kind of like, but why do we even second guess these things? And, it's learning about each and every one of us to have actually the norms that society put on us actually does not have to be our story. Write your own chapter and own the chapter.
Well, and I've looked at, I went to the NSA, the National Speakers Association, their annual conference a few years ago, and just watched some of the top 10 speakers, the best speakers in the world, to see what is it they do. And every one of them conveys emotion. Like, you don't get up there. You're not a good speaker if you're stiff and emotionless. The reason they're good speakers is because they make us feel what they're feeling. That's what really gets us. That's what connects you to a speaker. And so to me, I was like, oh, I need to emote more and get comfortable with that. I was already feeling it on the inside. Now I just had to express it on the outside.
Yeah. And and I think as well, it's that knowing and understanding that we feel like we're being emotive and vulnerable and, really raw, but actually what's showing is probably 2%. And it's not to say that that's wrong. It's a great start, but knowing that, you're not standing there going, oh, this is me. It's just kind of, letting people into your world a little bit. It's really powerful.
And I think losing the self-consciousness about it, oh my God, I expressed this, or I said this, or I did this, or I didn't do that. I think, to the extent you can kind of let the self-consciousness go in the moment and be present in the moment and give them what you're feeling without second guessing it, I think is a really, really good way to go, because it's that vulnerability. It's the emotion that, as I said, connects us to other people. It's not the, I'm successful, I wrote a book, I have a PhD. That doesn't connect us with people.
Yeah. And I think doing it to not get something back in return is what I've learned.
Yeah.
So it's offering it and allowing the space. I know that when I first went into the field of sharing and being vulnerable, on one hand, you're like, I hope people will sort of pour over me and be like, oh my God, how amazing. But then some people just be like, great, that's your story. And you'd be like, was it not sad enough? Did I not share it with enough like emotion? And, is it not good enough to share? And it's kind of like, it's all these second guesses. And when people come back to you months later and say, do you know what? That was a real turning point you share in your message with you. It made me think. But people, because they don't show it, it doesn't mean that it's not worth sharing.
Well, I think your story is brilliant, and I appreciate the hell out of you sharing it with us. And, I one of the things that I think is a big fucking deal is having people like you share your story and show, look, you can deal with this shit and you can come out on the other side and be successful and be happy despite the trauma that I've lived through. It gives inspiration to others, but more importantly, I think it gives people the permission to talk about it. Because I think so many of us live in the closet with these fears and guilt and shame about, oh my God, oh my God, I've been depressed. Oh my God, I was sexually abused, even though it wasn't my fault. And I think the more of us that can come out and just speak honestly and openly about it, it gives others the permission to do the same. And I think that's huge.
Thank you. And I would say if there's anybody listening who is sort of fighting that demon, is knowing that, it's absolutely fine. And at some point, I really would love for you to own that space for yourself and for me, I'm completely grateful for all of the good and bad that has happened, because it wouldn't have shaped me to who I am today. Exactly. And I know that's difficult for some people to hear. And I know it's very difficult for my parents to hear, because obviously they wish it never happened. But for me, it's kind of like, I know that what has happened to me for a reason. And this isn't the end of the story now. This is going to manifest and change. And, there's going to be good and bad shit that's going to happen in the future. But I know that it's happening for a reason. And I can utilize that to my strength, not to my weakness. It won't break me. It may do for a little bit, but I know that I've got it within me to be able to build that up. It's that forgiveness. Like, I never thought, if you'd have said 15 years ago, I'd forgive him. Like, now I'm completely like, I'm fine. I'm fine with it.
Forgiveness is a key skill in these areas. And I think also the idea of post-traumatic growth, not just post-traumatic stress, but post-traumatic growth. The fact that we can grow from terrible experiences, traumatic experiences, and use them to reach a higher level of personal development. And, I love the idea that, because there's some trauma that I've dealt with in the past, and I wouldn't change it, because I think that having gotten through it, I have that knowledge that if I dealt with that shit, I can deal with anything else that's coming at me in the future, and it's going to be relatively easy by comparison. So it gives me great confidence in my own psychological strength. And I think you're in the same boat.
Yeah, most definitely. And I think when you think of it like that, even if you're in the trenches right now and going through it, just keep going.
Yeah. Well, I also like the idea that bad or good, this is going to make a good story tomorrow. So even if I'm going through some shit right now, this is going to make a good story later that I can use to share with other people to help them through a similar situation.
Most definitely.
I used that idea when I was going through a really contentious divorce. Like, okay, this sucks right now, but in a few years, I'm going to use this and it's going to make a good story that's going to help out other people going through the same stuff.
Yeah. And when I love that, because I didn't realize I'd do it until you just said that, is documenting the struggle. Mm-hmm. And which I've done, because I think, when you reflect back, you think, oh yeah, I've kind of done that. I've done that. Yeah, I did that. You don't give yourself enough credit for how badass you really are.
Yeah.
So actually documenting it and the steps that you're taking, I wouldn't say it's journaling for me. It's more, this is a really crap time, but I'm going to journal it. I'm going to really keep notes on what I'm doing and how I'm feeling, and then seeing that progression rather than just going, well, yeah, it was just a bout of depression. I got over it. It's like, that's pretty big. Yeah,
that's badass. It's funny. So that whole divorce story, I waited several years. I waited till I could speak about it without anger and hurt. Mm-hmm. And then I did a version of it on the podcast, and I told kind of my divorce story. And shortly after that, I was looking at the ratings for the podcast, and they dropped from a 5 to much lower. And I was like, that's funny. Like, I wonder who would have left a bad review. And I went and looked at the reviews, and it was my ex-wife saying, John, this is not true, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, that's perfect. That's part of the story. Like, yes, she wouldn't agree because what she did was kind of terrible and some of it was illegal. And, you know, the stuff I put out there on my version of the story can all be documented. Like, it's all backed up by emails and legal papers that were filed in court. And it's like, okay, well, that's my story. You don't agree with it. That's okay. But this is my story. It needs to be shared because there's other people that have gone through a similar thing and they need to know what this stuff is about.
Yeah, it's the perception, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Same situation, different perspectives.
Yeah, I like that cartoon of two people looking at the number 9 drawn on the ground and one person saying it's a 9 and the other person on the other side saying, no, it's a 6.
Yeah.
They're both right. Different perception. All right. So is there anything, I got to wrap up because I've got another call here in a couple of minutes, but is there anything that I should have asked you that I did not?
No, I really love this conversation. It's gone into deep and wonderful places I didn't think we were going to go to. And
I enjoyed the hell out of this. This was fantastic.
Perfect. And I just want to, I think as a final note to anybody out there, I know I've said it before, but if you are in the trenches right now, regardless of what it is, depression, anxiety, just struggles, like just keep fighting that battle because it's not the overall war. Like, you've got this.
Yeah. And I think keep putting one foot forward, keep taking it a day at a time, keep making little tiny steps to get through it and to progress. And eventually you'll get out. Yes. So the other question I have is, where can people reach you if they want to contact you or work with you?
So people can find me on all the socials at Evolve with Melissa. Obviously, love the Evolve. Or you can find me at www.evolvewithmelissa.com. Okay.
And I will put those links in the show notes as well. So Melissa, thank you so much for your honesty and vulnerability. As I said, I loved this conversation. I really enjoyed it.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for allowing me the space to share it.
Absolutely. So next time I'm over in England, I will definitely look you up and we can have a pint.
Oh my God. Yeah.
After the pregnancy.
Yes. I can have a non-alcoholic one.
Oh, fantastic. All right. Well, Melissa, thank you again so much. And that's it for this episode of The Evolved Caveman.
Thank you for listening to the Evolved Caveman podcast. If you like what you've heard, support us by subscribing, leaving reviews, and sharing the podcast with friends and colleagues. For the latest, most powerful tools to connect with like-minded men, join the Facebook group at The Evolved Caveman. Follow Dr. John on Instagram at The Evolved Caveman, all one word, or join the email list by visiting guidetoself.com.